the book that changed your life the most, and that's Man's Search for Meaning. Tell me, like, where your life was, how were you feeling?
Still is healing from a lot of things, mostly from a near-death experience 2 years ago. At that moment, I realized that I almost died, and I realized that my mom almost lost her daughter.
That event, that moment, completely changed your perspective.
My entire life.
Today we have a very special guest. Dalyla Suon was born and raised in France, a college graduate with a bachelor's degree in Korean studies and a master's degree in sociology of immigration. Dalyla is currently pursuing an acting career here in Los Angeles. She's an avid reader. She reads between 15 and 20 books a year with a passion for psychology and exploring the human condition. And the book that had the most effect on her was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. How are you, Dalyla?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
What do you think about the library?
I'm very impressed. I saw some pictures, but being here, it's so it's different. The energy, and it smells so good. It smells like books, and I love that smell.
Me too. Don't you love it when you walk into like a bookstore that sells like used books and you kind of get that?
I mean, bookstores are probably one of my favorite places, and this is just awesome. I just love it. It's one of my dreams to have my own library too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What, like, how would you design it?
I think it would be a very woody. I like old, in huge library, there's like these little kind of lamps, and it's like bookshelves that a lot of wood and open. But I love the workplace too that you have. It feels like you can just come in and do your own research. I just love that feeling.
Yeah. What are your favorite bookstores?
To be honest, I don't have any here because I'm born and raised in France.
And you mostly read in French?
Here, no, I only read in English.
And what categories, like fiction?
A lot of psychology.
The interest in psychology comes from where?
I
Like,
started to be curious about how people succeed. So I started with what's that name guy? He's very famous. I don't remember the book. How to Make Friends. I don't remember.
that's my first book too.
Oh, really?
Where I was very different after I read it than before.
I read it like a long time ago. I bet if I read it now, it would be different. But I learned so much with that one, and how to communicate with people and make sure that there's an exchange and not just your point of view versus mine. And I started with that book, and it went on and on and on with other books. Yeah.
It's a good one. There's a lot of good stories in that book.
Yeah.
It's just stories.
Yes.
Okay, so today we're here to talk about the book that changed your life the most, the one you picked to be the most influential, and that's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
By Viktor Frankl. So, how old were you when you read this?
33. I read it a few months ago.
Oh, it's not that long ago.
No.
Tell me, like, where your life was. How were you feeling?
My life still is healing from a lot of things, mostly from a near-death experience 2 years ago, and then a breakup that followed that near-death experience. And so I decided to just be by myself and look into my darkness and get to know myself, to be honest. And that's when my mind space was, who am I today? My identity, what I learned when I was a kid, and does it serve me today as an adult? After my near-death experience, that book just made me realize that I was using the same tools that he did to, escape that darkness. And that's how this book changed my life.
So tell me about the near-death experience. What happened?
It was a random Monday night. I was at my ex's place and I went back to my place. So I took my car, but I was like hesitating between taking the freeway to go home faster or take the streets. And I was like, I'm very tired. I'm gonna just take the freeway. I'll be there faster. So I took the freeway and suddenly there's like traffic. So I stopped my car and the person behind me didn't see any traffic. So he went full speed, I think 70 miles per hour in my car.
Oh my gosh. What kind of car were you in?
A small SUV. I think it did save my life, So he rear-ended me so fast and so hard that my car flipped and rolled over several times. And the whole time it felt like eternity waiting for the car to stop.
For it to stop rolling?
Yeah, to stop rolling.
So like time stood still, like it felt like days?
I had no idea. I was just waiting and it felt like such a long time to wait. Am I gonna die or not? It happened in a few seconds. The car stopped on the side like that. And I didn't know it was on the side, so I tried to open my door, but the door was on the ground. And
so you were really out of it?
Oh yeah, I checked if I had any blood on it. I was very lucky. I realized that my car was on the side when I felt like I had to climb out of the car. So I did that and I jumped out of the car. And then there's that one lady who was a nun. She came to me and she's like, do you need any help? And I was like, no, I don't need any help. I'm okay. But then she asked me again. I don't know why she did that again, but she asked me again, do you need help? And I said, I need a hug. And then she took me in her arms. And at that moment, I realized that I almost died. And I realized that my mom almost lost her daughter, which is not how life is supposed to happen. And after that, I think the accident was just the beginning of how dark my life was going to be mentally. It was very tough.
What do you mean?
I never...
Before that, it was dark?
No, I mean, I had a tough childhood, but I had like a pretty peaceful life. And then that accident, when you're young and you just think you're just going to die from an old age, you're just going to...
think you're invincible.
Yeah. And then that night just was like, no, you can just die, just like that. And then I had to struggle mentally with survivor's guilt. I had to struggle with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, all those stuff that I never had before in my life. It all came all at once and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't know who I was anymore. I was very fragile mentally.
Did you end up going to the hospital and they checked you out?
Yeah, I went. The ambulance came pretty fast because my phone, when your phone drops, there's a big shot, it called automatically yeah, it did.
Apple?
Yes.
Apple saving lives.
Yeah, it did. I went to the ER, they checked me. I had, bruises, but nothing else. Nothing else. Back pain, neck pain.
What about the person that hit you?
I have no idea. I know that the person who hit me is autistic, actually. I thought he was on drug because his car was on fire and he was just so close to the car and we kept telling him, come with us. But then my friend, a few days later, checked Instagram and they saw that he was autistic. Yeah. I don't know if it helped my healing. I'm not sure, but...
So that event, that moment, completely changed your perspective.
My entire life.
And it made you face some things that you'd never even thought existed?
Yeah.
Okay, then how did that play into your breakup? How do those go hand in hand?
Well, I was very on edge. You know, I was angry. I was grieving.
How long had you been dating the person?
A year.
A year. Okay.
And it took us another year to try to, you know, make it up, make it work. But yeah, I was on edge, fighting for love, couldn't receive help. I just couldn't see it. And also, I thought I didn't deserve it at all. I didn't deserve to be happy. Why am I still alive? Why some people have car accidents and die? And I don't know why I did that. The next day I checked. Car accidents on the 101, and the family, just the entire family died. And I was like, I felt so guilty being alive, and I couldn't appreciate life after that, just because I thought I didn't deserve it anymore. So even if you have people who love you, and it's usually the closest people to your heart that you hurt the most, that's what happened to me. And I didn't know how to handle things, which is okay now that I'm not in that situation anymore. I think it's totally okay to be on edge and grieving and needed some time to know who you are again.
It's natural.
It's very natural, you know. But yeah, that's why we broke up. Yeah.
So you got a low and then another low.
Yeah.
And then who tells you about the book, or how do you find the book? How does it come into your life?
We were talking with my friend about books. I don't know if you know that, the 4 Agreements.
Yeah.
And then my friend told me that this book was about a man who was in camp, and the only thing that people couldn't take from him was his thoughts. And this triggered my curiosity. And that's how I heard about the book.
And how long did it take you to finish it?
Maybe 10 days.
So
Yeah.
quick.
Pretty quick.
You engaged the book and
I engaged the book. I took some breaks because it was intense. You know, when you read a book and sometimes there's some parts, some sentences that are so that you can relate to them. And it feels like when you drink your first sip of a beer, or it felt like that. I was like, oh my God, that is just so beautiful. Even if the book is like, he talks about camp life, but there's a beauty in how he talks about it, I believe.
I love that feeling when you it gets you, right?
Yeah.
There's a thing like that that happened to me that I realized is when I was young, I would play golf.
Yeah.
And I was terrible, but the one good shot would keep you coming back.
Yes. And it's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even better in a book.
Yes.
And also the timing, like when a book will enter your life by coincidence, but it's exactly what you needed.
Exactly.
That feeling is pretty cool too.
It's awesome. And that's why books are so important for me.
So when you start the book, do you remember what the first thing was that you were like, oh, hold on, this is special?
How he describes his life camp was a lot of sadness, to be honest.
So it's during the premises is during the Holocaust, and he's in a German camp.
Yes, yes. And he describes how he's just became a number. He doesn't have a name anymore. He's just nobody.
So completely stripped of his identity.
Yes, and his belongings. I think he only keep his shoes or something like that. He's stripped naked. They shaved him, and he's just has nothing left. I just had that image in my mind, you know, and I think it's just horrible, and that's why I had to take some breaks.
Did you feel like your identity had been disrupted?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were stripped?
Yes.
If you think about like, especially for a female, like if you shaved your head.
Yeah.
Like your.
I mean, I think that's what he went through is horrible, right? And I think I want to be careful about not comparing my situation to his.
I understand.
But when you say stripped of my identity, yes, because I didn't know who I was anymore. That's how I felt. It wasn't physical. It was just it was mental. I just didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to live. You know, it's like I was learning how to walk again, like a baby is learning how to walk. I was just learning how to walk again.
And was that part one of the parts that you stepped away and had to think about it a little bit?
There's several parts in the book that I had to take like some breaks, yeah.
What's the next part?
The next one that struck me was when he's laying on his bed and he said that there's a soul window next to him, and they put a corpse next, and he's just reading something and he looks at the corpse and then he just goes back to his book. This was also extremely sad because for me, because for him to survive in camps, he had to ignore the pain. And he talks about the opposite of empathy, apathy.
Apathy.
Yeah. And he talks about emotional death. And he's just looking at the corpse and like nothing happened. He's just going back to what he's doing. And this is repressing so much, you know. And I related to that part because I think I had to repress a lot in my entire life. And then the accident brought up so many feelings that I couldn't repress anymore. It's like, no, you have to deal with them now.
What, you just didn't have time to stand up for yourself, or how did you feel?
I mean, growing up with alcoholic dad is you're not heard, you're not seen. So you believe that there's no need to talk for me. I don't need to talk. I'm going to handle this by myself at a very young age. And I did that my entire life. And now, after the accident, I have all those feelings and I need to talk about them. I feel I cannot keep them. Like suicidal thoughts, never had them before. I'm like, is it normal to have those suicidal thoughts? You know?
No,
No. And
it's
I
not
didn't
okay.
know.
It's a imbalance.
But I want to tell it's okay after this kind of near-death experience. I think so many people have those suicidal thoughts and they think it's like a shame to talk about them. I want to say, if you have them, just say it. Hey, I have. I mean, it sounds so easy, but that's what I did. At the time with my partner, I was like, I have suicidal thoughts. My ex said it's normal, and I had the therapy at that time. So I talked to my therapist, and we went through all the process of how do I think of committing suicide. So she asked me the questions, and I said,
Wait, so the therapist asked you how you would commit suicide if you did?
yeah, and it's I think I read somewhere that it's some therapists do that and some others are very against it.
What do you think?
It helped me. I didn't commit suicide. So we were.
What happens when you go through how you would do it? What positive thing comes out of that?
Well, she asked me how I would do it. I said with a gun. Okay, that was my first. I was like,
Do you have a gun?
I do not, and
Okay.
that's the thing.
That's
She's
probably a good way to do it if you don't have a gun.
Yeah, but she didn't know that. She's like, "How would you do it?" I said, "With the gun, I would put it in my mouth and shot myself, like I see in the movies." She's like, "Okay, do you have a gun?" I said, "No," and she said, "How would you get a gun?" And then my whole process starts with like, "Okay, I need to go to the store and do the paperwork and give my idea." And at that moment, I was like, "No, I don't want to commit suicide." That's why that method, I don't know how they call it, but
Well, it's going through the process.
Yes, it helped me. I'm like, I'm not going to do that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in there, because when you were describing it, I thought like an outcome is also like how lucky we are.
Yeah.
Like whatever our problems are, don't compare to that, right?
Yeah.
Did you get that feeling a little bit?
No, I never compared my situations to others just because I don't think I'm wired that way. My mom taught me not to. when it comes to the book, I never compared myself to his situation, but I related to his feelings and thoughts process. Um, but I think in general in life, I think everybody has their own journey. And maybe I needed that car accident to get to know who I really am and what I deserve and how to navigate in this world. You know, someone will be sick, have a cancer, you know. I just think that we all need some sort of trials in our lives. Maybe we don't need it, but it's just we cannot avoid pain, you know, in disease, breakups, death. And I think just each person has their own journey. And if I can help with my own experience, I mean that's one of my goals, to be able to help people with my own darkness, I would say. Yeah.
Just by sharing your story
Yeah.
helps people because they realize that they're not alone.
Exactly.
That
Yeah.
we all face different stuff.
Yeah.
And when you just see somebody, you can't assume that everything's okay.
No, never.
What any other big takeaways from the book?
Yeah, at some point he talks about his wife, and his wife is not with him. So I think he was walking in the cold with all the prisoners, and he needed to escape his the environment he was in. And to do that, he was imagining conversations with his wife, and you can tell how much he loves her. And I think it did saved his life, love. And it sounds so cheesy, but also love saved my life. And I could relate with him in that part of the book, with how he was in that cold environment, but he felt warmth from just thinking about his wife. He talks about inner liberty, inner freedom, and we all have that choice every day, every hour to go there, you know. And I have that with my mom. She loves me and my sisters so unconditionally that I think that's why I was able to get out of that depression after the accident, because I know what type of, I mean, I love to say I come from love, and that type of love can make you move mountains if you want to. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful too that the first thing you thought about when you got in your accident was your mom.
It was the first thing I thought about. Her love, she went through a lot. My mom is Cambodian, and she fled the Khmer Rouge, the genocide in Cambodia. And she didn't have an easy life. She came in France. Her husband was alcoholic, was pretty violent with her. So I grew up in a household where it wasn't safe. But just because my mom was there, I felt pretty safe.
Because of the love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's there, that loving presence. And I think the book, that's how I felt it. His wife is a loving presence in his life, even if he doesn't know if she's still alive. And he said it doesn't matter because she's there. And I think it was just beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Is there anything about the book that you didn't like?
There is one huge thing. When I read the book and when I closed it, I was very mad at it. And I'm going to tell you why. So the books has two chapters. The first one, Victor talks about his life in camps, and the second one he talks about his theory, the logotherapy. And the first chapter, I felt like here, sitting on chairs. He's sitting in front of me. There's a fire. He's like, Delila, I'm going to tell you my story. And I'm just sitting here drinking his words and his emotions and his feelings. And then we go to the second part of the book where I feel robbed of all this. And I felt like sitting in a cold auditorium in college It's not just me and him, it's me, him, and hundreds of students. And he's talking about his theories. I was mad at it because it felt like we went from being very emotional to being very practical. It's like first part of the book you feel with your heart, second part of the book you are forced to think with your brain, and it didn't sit right with me. Let's say you go back home with your partner and say I had a bad day, and your partner, instead of just listening, is like trying to be practical and logical about it when you just want to vent. It felt like that. It felt like I couldn't process what he just told me, and now we're jumping into something very practical.
You were still in the emotion.
Exactly. I was still there. And maybe I needed to take a break, maybe a week or a few days, and then go into the second part. But I don't understand why he did that, because in the second part of the book, he's not even using his camp life and use it with his logotherapy. He uses like his patient's stories about there's a mom who lost her kid to cancer. There's a guy who wants to quit his job, but it has nothing to do with the first part. And I just didn't understand why. I think it would have been great if it was two different books.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Any last like big takeaways?
I think it's, even if I got mad at the book, it's still one of my favorites. Just because I got that reaction. And I do believe, I think, this book, I think, would serve, I mean, I believe that it would help a lot of people if they can just read that one. I think it's just such a, even if the story is like horrible, it's just beautiful how he coped with the situations and how he was able to survive just by using his inner freedom, I guess.
Kind of one last question. Explain the darkness to me.
The darkness of the book or mine?
Yours. You've referenced it a couple times, so
Scared of love, intimacy. I think it's just a protection that I have. I do know now, working on my healing, that I deserve it. Do I let people approach me that easily? No. I'm working on it.
you don't trust easy.
No, I don't trust easy,
Why do you describe that as darkness?
because there's love and there's, what's the opposite of love?
It's a great question.
I don't know what it is. But there's love and there's, I don't want love. I don't know how to say it, but darkness would be, for me, would be, do not love me, I'm going to hurt you.
Okay.
And to know, now I know who I am. I will never hurt anybody intentionally, but I needed to know who I am. And now I'm maybe more ready to have someone in my life. But yeah, before I would be, do not love me. You're just gonna get hurt. Yeah. But it's saying, it's a way of saying, do not love me because I know you're gonna hurt me, and before I let you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you first. Just a protection.
So is there a magic in the fact that you have shined a light on it? Like now that you realize it, does it lose power?
It's beautiful. It is magic. I think just acknowledge it, like, okay, this is
A thing, it's
a
real.
thing, it's real, it's me.
It's a pattern.
It's a pattern, exactly. Do I want it in my life? Does it serve me? Because it used to serve me as a kid. I needed to protect myself that way. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm thanking those walls that I put up for myself. Thank you, but I don't need you anymore. I'm an adult now, and if I get hurt, I think I can handle it. But as a kid, I couldn't. It was the only way for me to protect myself. I didn't know any other way. to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then the thing is, what now I'm different, and that doesn't serve me now. So
Yeah, exactly. I needed to unlearn a lot. To
unlearn.
to unlearn a lot.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because when you unlearn things, you make room for new things to learn, but you need to detach and unlearn so many things to get there.
It's amazing. Well, I really appreciate this and you opening up like this. Can I share some books that I want to give you?
Yes, of course. I would love it.
I have no fiction.
Okay, that's perfect.
Have you ever heard of Rape of the Mind?
No.
Okay, so very similar to Frankel, Jous Merlu, which is the greatest name, and I think he's French. I think Jous Merlu had family that went through the same thing, and was very curious why the soldiers would do it, how people came out of the concentration camps and they were fine, and other people never recovered, and what was the difference. And one of the differences was having loved ones you were thinking about, all that. So there's 2 books of his I would recommend.
Okay.
But this is the better of the 2. So if you don't like this one, you won't like the other one. But the other one's called Delusions and Mass Delusions.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's right up your alley, and it's...
Thank you so much. I love the title.
Okay, and then the next, Dostoevsky, have you read that?
No, but he talks about him in the book.
Okay, so Brothers.
Okay.
My favorite part of this one is the idea of salvation, and that true salvation is accepting responsibility for things beyond yourself. And so he has a passage in here where he says salvation is accepting responsibility for everybody, basically.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, if you really want to test this out, go down to a courthouse and find somebody who's just been sentenced to jail for a crime and serve the time for them and set them free.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then the last one, this book is just nuts. Like,
Okay.
everybody I give this book to says it's their favorite book.
Okay.
My best friend gave it to me, but it's Nathaniel Branden's 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. He studied self-esteem his whole life. He wrote a bunch of books on it. And then this is kind of the summary of it's not what you think.
Okay.
It's kind of like How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay.
Where you think it's one thing, but it's really not just self-esteem.
Okay.
It's got a lot of depth. And this is one of those books where I had those moments. If I had my copy here and you could see the highlights, like I might have highlighted 60% of the book.
Oh, wow.
Like at points I was like, I'm just highlighting everything.
Yeah.
But it's incredible.
Thank you so much.
Of the 3, I would read that one first.
That one first? Why?
Well, if you get through the first 2 chapters and you're not hooked, then...
Okay.
By the way, that's how I read books. If I'm not hooked by the 2nd chapter...
Oh, you don't finish them?
No way.
I force myself.
Why?
I try to. I don't know. I feel like
it doesn't deserve it.
That's true.
Your time's too valuable.
That's true. I'll remember that.
Why would you date somebody that's not a right fit? Like,
that's perfect.
You're dating a book. You're gone.
I never thought I was forced.
Some authors are terrible. They write
what?
books and they're just agitating the question. They never tell it. You know, if I haven't learned something or had an aha moment by the 2nd chapter,
that is
it's not going to get better.
Funny because I would try to force. I feel guilty not to finish it, but the way you said it, I'm like, no, I'm not going to.
I always think like, what would I pay not to read this book? And it's a lot more than the $20 the book cost.
Okay.
Right? Because your time is worth more than that.
That's true. It's very true.
Just math.
It is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.